Returnal is one of those games you're either going to really love or really hate. But if you can overcome the difficulty and its struggle, you will be rewarded with one of the best and most underrated games on the PlayStation 5. It's true Returnal isn't the most welcoming experience, and it's not meant to be. There will be frustration, there is annoyance in dying and having to start over every single time, but the deeper you dive into the game, the more intriguing it becomes. Right from that moment Celine crash lands on the planet and finds a deceased version of herself, she's pulled into a never-ending time loop that can only progress with her death. It's a world rich in Lovecraftian inspiration, from the details of each biome to the incredible designs of the bosses, and the influence of Greek mythology ever present in Celine's journey to survive. It's a story up for interpretation as you discover clues about Celine's past. As you learn, you gain a more vivid understanding of what the game is trying to show you. Ultimately, Returnal is a compromise for Housemarque, a game true to their development style, but one that has a broader appeal than their previous titles. As much as they love developing fast, arcade-like games, they weren't selling well, and things had to change. Returnal is an ambitious culmination of their legacy. Their past games create the DNA that makes Returnal what it is. So I wanted to shine a light on some of Housemarque's previous games. If you enjoyed Returnal, you'll more than likely enjoy these. Each game has some sort of relation to Returnal. Flashy colors, fast-paced action, sci-fi elements. They aren't necessarily easy games, but there is challenge with each. Starting off, we have a PlayStation classic, the Super Stardust series. While its origins go all the way back to the Amiga, once Sony got hold of the series, there are entries on the PlayStation 3, the PSP, the Vita, and the PlayStation 4. Super Stardust is a twin-stick shooter, as are all the other games in this video, and each entry has its own gimmick, so to speak, whether that be portability, using the Vita's gyro sensors, or a first-person VR mode, but that core gameplay remains in each. You control a ship protecting a planet from everything that threatens to destroy it. Asteroids, alien enemies, explosives. It's chaotic and can easily become overwhelming. Giant asteroids are shot into smaller pieces, while enemies shoot a barrage of projectiles. One moment you think you have control, and then the simplest of mistakes can easily make you lose a life. There's so much flying around on screen, it can be difficult to keep track. Your ship has 3 types of weapons you can easily swap to. Each weapon works best with certain materials and enemies and can take out your opponents faster and easier. Upgrades can be found to make weapons more powerful, shields can prevent you from losing a life, your ship can dash through objects, which can be very helpful when everything becomes a bit too much. And you have a certain number of bombs you can use, but more can always be found. All of this is needed to survive. Each planet ends in a giant boss fight. Suddenly you're thrust into learning patterns, finding weak points to attack, and avoiding everything thrown at you. These have always been great games to pick up and play. They're challenging but not frustrating. Anyone can play them, and that's what's great about Super Stardust. It's pure modern arcade action. Out of the games listed in this video, Detonation is the furthest from Housemarque's signature futuristic style. It's set in the present day but still retains those sci-fi elements by taking place during a zombie apocalypse. If you played any of Housemarque's arcade games, Detonation is no different. Players pick one of 2 characters in either single player or in co-op online or offline. Gameplay here is the star, while the story is very forgettable. You'll find Detonation to be a major departure from your typical Housemarque game. It's not flashy, it's not fast, but it is one of the best survival games I've ever played. Large hordes of zombies and other creatures can easily overwhelm you if you aren't prepared well enough. The game will lead you on a path you can't avoid, and you'll need enough distance between you and the zombies to gain that upper hand. Different weapons are useful for different situations. An SMG is highly recommended for tight spaces if overwhelmed. The rifle is your main weapon. Charge up your shot and you can easily blast through a chain of zombies. A well-upgraded flamethrower can light enemies on fire and chip away at their health. All of this can easily deplete your ammo, so in a way you need to strategize. If it all becomes too much, slice through zombies with a melee attack or dash past them to make space. It's useful but shouldn't be used as a main form of combat because you will not go far. The environment plays a big part in detonation. Cars and vending machines can be shot to set off alarms, distract zombies, and even blow them up. Explosive barrels can be shot at, grenades thrown, flares used so you can mow down hordes of the undead. From city streets to rooftops and a graveyard, detonation takes you all over. Waiting for elevators to come down as waves of zombies threaten to stop the process, opening lock gates that await packs of zombies on the other side. It's easy to die, and if your armor isn't powerful enough, it's time to change it so you have a better chance. The game might have the least in common with Returnal, but its Road of Devastation DLC is very reminiscent. Round after round, players make choices on which upgrade path they want to take, and it could either help or screw them over. One path might have a useful weapon, while another has needed health. Every choice dictates survival. It's never as complex as Returnal, but it's a fun extra mode. And if you want the full experience, I recommend Detonation Apocalypse Edition on the PlayStation 4. It's the complete game and you can easily play it on modern platforms. Resogun is the spiritual successor to Super Stardust and plays very similar to it. Instead of taking place around the planet, it now takes place in a city. Alien forces are attacking, and as levels progress, humans are released, need to be saved, and transported to safety points. If you're not fast enough, they can die. Resogun offers 3 different ships to pick from. Each ship has different stats depending on how you want to approach the game. Power-ups and upgrades can be found and used like boosting, bombs, and a powerful beam of energy. Like Super Stardust, a lot happens on screen and each level ends with a massive boss battle. But what makes Resogun stunning are the graphics. This was a PlayStation 4 launch game and it needed to showcase the power of a new console. Every explosion, every blast blows up the enemies and the environments into hundreds of thousands of tiny little cubic voxels. It's one giant spectacle as all these cubes flow around the level. And the biggest surprise came when people heard
"Save the last humans"
blast through the PlayStation 4's controller. It felt innovative and added a new depth of immersion for the game. Outside of a few PS4 games doing that, I still haven't had that kind of experience. Resogun offers just as much challenge as any Super Stardust game. If you play one, you need to play the other because they complement each other well. Alienation is a non-stop ride of neon colors, explosions, and destruction. Earth is under attack and invaded by aliens, so it's up to a military group to take a stand and attack. This is a game you can play by yourself, but Alienation is a game built for multiple players. Up to 4 players can join and team up against the attack. Pick from one of 3 types of character classes, each with their own abilities, weapons, and movesets. This includes the tank, the biospecialist, and the saboteur. The tank is bigger, more powerful, but slow. The biospecialist can heal teammates, create poisonous trails, and the saboteur can turn invisible, gaining the upper hand. Experience is gained by defeating enemies, and leveling up gives players points to spend on various skill trees for new abilities. Weapons can be improved with upgrade cores, affecting damage, clip size, and rate of fire. And of course, players can dash and melee attack if needed. Once story mode is completed, players can expand their game by completing new assignments to earn special rewards. New levels are unlocked with difficult enemies and more powerful weapons, set in procedurally generated levels in a roguelike kind of mode. Basically, if you love Detonation, you'll probably love Alienation. It's action heavy, more is involved, but anytime you can play with others is a great time. Nex Machina is like an extension of Resogun. Think of it as a companion game, only this time players literally hit the ground running and shooting. This game goes fast, clear an area of enemies and you're immediately transported to the next. Like Resogun, enemies explode in voxels. Environments are destructible, often hiding extra lives and power-ups, sometimes even secret humans. Saving humans isn't required, but it does give bonus points. Returnal had some tough bosses. With all the patterns of colorful projectiles flying at you, it was so easy to die, and that's how the bosses in Nex Machina are. They are challenging. That second boss battle constantly kicked my ass, and even after beating it, the game just became more difficult from there. You always need to be on the move. Rarely will there be a moment of simply standing around, and because the game is so quick, time never feels wasted by playing this. If you want a challenge, Nex Machina will give you just that. It's probably one of the few games on the list that felt more like Returnal because of its quick pace and the boss battles. Finally, we have the last game Housemarque released before Returnal. Matterfall to me has always felt like Housemarque's take on Metroid, just without the backtracking and maze-like maps. There is a basic story, really it's more of an afterthought. A futuristic world is suddenly taken over by this alien material called smart matter. This is where Avalon Darrow comes in. She's sent in to take out these aliens and save trapped humans in every level. She can jump, double jump, dodge, dash into enemies to stun them, often chaining these together to survive. But more importantly, her battlesuit is armed with a cannon that can shoot at enemies. Different perks can be equipped like grenades and shotgun blasts, things I often forgot about but were needed as levels became difficult. The more humans you save, the more additional perks you unlock. There are some platforming elements, and sometimes Avalon will need to create platforms to progress. These can also act as shields against enemy attacks, and you can shoot through these, which is perfect for tricky sections. One of my favorite bits were the 0G sections. Avalon floats around, shoots at enemies, avoids danger. It helped to break up the basic gameplay. And of course, each area ends in a boss fight. Challenging, creative, and different every time. Matterfall may be a side-scroller, but you still need some sort of precision in aiming and moving because it's a twin-stick shooter. It's awkward at first and may turn people away, but give it some time, get used to the controls, and it's an awesome experience. Matterfall is a bit slower, gives you more time to breathe, but still challenging, especially later in the game. I find myself replaying levels on harder difficulties just to see if I'm up for the challenge. You can't just blast your way through, and like Returnal, the payoff is worth it. All these games show just how passionate Housemarque has been over the years. Things have changed, but they never stepped away from the identity that makes them who they are. Even with Returnal being their biggest and most ambitious project to date, it still has that fast-paced, colorful, arcade-like gameplay. It's easy to see what they pulled from each of their past games into Returnal. I'm excited to see where Housemarque goes from here. Since the release of Returnal, Sony has purchased Housemarque. How will this not only affect their next game, but the studio overall? I look forward to seeing what happens. But let us know down in the comments, have you played any of these Housemarque games? Which did you enjoy? Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell to be notified on future content. And while you're here, check out my in-depth video on why you need to be playing Returnal. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.